Yes. Sorry for being late. There has been an urgent matter in our school which needs my attention. Anyways, uh, for today's session, we will try to continue our discussion. But before we proceed, do you have any concerns or clarifications, questions perhaps, with regards to our previous discussion? Any concern?
No, sir.
Okay, so presumably we are good to go, right? So anyways, sino ba dito yung merong mga boyfriends at saka mga girlfriends? Miss Solatorio, do you have a boyfriend?
Ronald, sir. Kasi patak ka niya.
Pardon, sir.
Do you have a boyfriend, Miss Solatorio? What? Yes or no? Halagi.
Yes, sir. Ay, wala.
Nag-second, ano ka pa ha? Nag-second thought ka pa. So, you have.
Wala pa, sir.
What about you, Mr. Gabutan? Do you have a girlfriend?
Single, sir. Toyo, single. Biyas ko yan. Naglain.
Mrs. Parsha, do you have a boyfriend?
Kana.
Wala,
Kana,
sir.
sir.
Mrs. Parsha,
Sir,
do you have a boyfriend?
wala pa, sir.
Wala pa?
Wala, sir.
Lahat ba dito, mga single? Wala naman na.
Single, sir. Sanyo rin.
na rin.
Forever, sir. Single.
Miss De Pedro, Miss Carla Jane. Carla Jane De Pedro.
Wala, sir. Wala. Di pwede, sir.
But, naka-experience na kayo ng, or rather, nagkaroon na kayo ng relationship with a boyfriend, girlfriend?
Yes, sir. Before.
Yeah.
Before. Okay. Sige. So, siguro, unahin ko munang tanungin yung mga kababaihan natin. So, yes or no lang yung sagot tayo siya, no? Were there times na tiningnan nyo yung messenger account or yung cellphone to be specific, just to monitor whether or not baka merong iba yung boyfriends, no? Yes or no lang? Nagkaroon ba ng instance na tiningnan nyo yung phone ng boyfriends ninyo just to check on his messages, may it be on text or via messenger, to check whether or not baka merong mga ibang Did you?
Wala, sir.
Yes.
Wala. Miss Latorio?
Wala, sir. Wala.
Miss Latorio, you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Let me ask you, ano ang purpose kung bakit mo tiningnan yung
Insurance,
phone?
sir.
Ha?
Insurance.
Insurance or assurance? Assurance na baka
Di kitaglaig.
Mamaya meron ng iba, di ba? Tama ba?
Yes, sir.
So in other words, gusto mo malaman kung ano yung totoo. Tama?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Kasi nga, the reason why I ask you that is because what you did, Miss Senatorio, is what we refer to as investigation. Alright?
Yes, sir.
So simply speaking, when we speak of investigation, we are talking about an inquiry or we are talking about a process of ascertaining a truth. Diba? Para malaman mo kung ano yung totoo. Now, if we are to use the concepts, if you are to use the concept of investigation, so accordingly, investigation is the act or process of investigating or the condition of being investigated. Or simply speaking, it refers to a search or inquiry for ascertaining facts. So as I was mentioning earlier, what Ms. Latorio did is what we refer to as an investigation. Etymologically speaking, the term investigation came from a Latin term investigat. Ibig sabihin ng word na investigate is to inquire or to discover. Okay? So, if you try to find out the truth by means of inquiry, by means of asking questions, that is investigation. Right? Gusto mo malaman kung ano yung sinabi nung best friend mo, nung magkausap sila, nung kaaway mo, that is an investigation. Wait lang ah. Sir, what if dual account? Unya to sila gachat-chat sa inyong kapit. Ah, ewan ko kasi wala akong experience sa ganyan. But siguro some other time we will talk about that. But let us proceed or let us tackle first on the essential concepts muna regarding investigation. So, as I was saying, investigation, acts or process. So if we try to inquire, if we try to ask questions, if we try to establish the truth respecting a certain circumstance, then that is what we refer to as investigation. So the question now is, what is criminal investigation? So according to Kael and Agas, criminal investigation is defined as the collection and analysis of facts or truths about persons, things, places that are subjects of a crime to identify the guilty party, locate the whereabouts of the guilty party, and provide admissible pieces of evidence to establish in the guilt of parties involved in crime. Or simply speaking, if we try to apply the concept of investigation in order to find out what really happened surrounding a particular crime, then definitely that is what we refer to as a criminal investigation. So obviously, in the conducts of criminal investigation, we have different there are different phases and we have different goals. We have different purpose in conducting criminal investigation, and that includes, firstly, to identify the guilty party. Secondly, to locate the whereabouts of the guilty party. And once we have identified, once we have located, the last goal is to provide evidence that can produce or that can secure conviction, right? So on the other hand, according to Sabdelli and Peña, criminal investigation is a legal inquiry. So meaning to say, a criminal investigation as a form of investigation is a form of inquiry which is conducted within the boundaries of the law. Meaning to say there are certain protocols or what we do in conducting criminal investigation must be in adherence with whatever existing laws that tries to define the uh, protocols in the conduct of criminal investigation. That includes uh, RA number 7438, detailing the different rights of a person when under custodial investigation. That also includes the Philippine National Police, their so-called operational manual. Right? So, uh, criminal investigation is a legal inquiry by virtue of a complaint. So definitely a criminal investigation always starts with a complaint. Complaint to follow up, examine, trace, track, and search, step-by-step examination or process, and meticulous observation. The facts of the commission of a crime, the identity of the actors, and the circumstances attendant thereto by careful evaluation of all available pieces of evidence to the end that violators of the law will be brought to the bar of justice and the innocent be relieved therefrom. So that's another concept of criminal investigation. So again, let me just put it simply, criminal investigation, the application of the concepts of investigation to determine the truth surrounding a particular crime. Okay? So in conducting investigation, whatever we do, it must be within the boundaries of the law. Also, investigation always starts with a complaint. We cannot conduct an investigation if there is no complaint. All right? So we proceed with yun. So since we are now about criminal investigation, obviously the the matter being questioned is whether or not there is a certain crime. But we need to but we really need to know what is crime. Diba? So accordingly, crime, these are actions or transgressions of a law. And crime is more of a generic term, if you can still remember. It is generic in a sense that actually there are three terminologies that that differs according to whatever law that is being violated. For example, we have the felony, we have the offense, and we have the infraction. Felony, these are acts and omissions in violation of the revised penal code. And say, for example, murder, homicide, rape. So these are what we call as felonious acts or felony. And then there are certain instances, or there are instances wherein um, a violation or an act is considered a crime and it was not defined by the revised penal code. Rather, it was defined by a special penal law. What do we mean by special penal law? These are laws that cannot be found in the revised penal code. Say for example, yung RA 9262 or the Violence Against Women and Their Children Act. So that is an example of a special penal law. The 9165, again, that is a special penal law. And if you are to observe, the difference between the revised penal code at saka sa special penal law is commonly mabibigat yung penalties kapag offense yung na-commit or kapag if it is in violation of a special penal law as compared to that of those that are in violation of the revised penal code. What I mean is not to mention the murder, homicide. What I was saying is considering that the revised penal code was already rather almost a century old na siya, matanda na siya. So definitely yung mga penalties niya, yung corresponding na penalties, in fact, yung mga fines masyadong maliliit if applied sa kung use if applied nowadays. Kasi obviously yung hundreds nung una malaki sa kanila pero sa atin ngayon is maliit na. So that there is a big disparity. All right? So, yun, that is the concept of offense. Then we have the infraction. The infraction is violation ng mga municipal at saka mga city ordinances. Like for example, curfew, yung no smoking, yung no jaywalking, those are infractions. So anyways, that's the concept of crime. And accordingly, we have the so-called three elements or crime, what we refer to as the triangle of crime or pwede rin siyang tinatawag na crime triangle. Definitely, it states that the mere absence of an element, automatically a crime cannot exist. Right? So, accordingly, there are three elements. We have the motive, opportunity, and the instrumentality or capability. So when we speak of motive, we refer to the moving power or force which compels a person to commit acts towards a definite result, right? So, however, when it comes to pagdating na ng trial, when it comes to the actual hearing of the case, it is not the motive that is being proven. What is really being proven is the so-called intent. Right? Kasi when we speak of intent, we are talking about the desire. Or simply speaking, ano yung gusto niya. Okay? There is a difference between motive at saka sa intent. Ano ba yung pinagkaiba nila? Ang motive is, say for example, di ba, it is a moving power or force. Say for example, gutom, uhaw. So pag ginugutom ka, normally that is a compelling force. It tells your stomach, it tells your brain na kailangan mong kumain na para masatisfy, para mabusog ka. In the same manner, pag inuuhaw ka, kailangan mong uminom. Di ba? That is a motive. That is a compelling force. Same is true with jealousy, greed, di ba? Parang jealousy, nagselos ka kasi yung girlfriend mo or boyfriend mo, nakita mo, merong kasama sa isang hotel, nagalit ka, that is a motive. However, when it comes to trial, hindi yan yung tinitingnan. Alright? Ang tinitingnan is yung intent or desire. So for example, sinaksak mo yung nung makita mo yung boyfriend mo, or rather, nung makita mo yung girlfriend mo, may kasamang ibang lalaki, lumabas sila sa isang hotel, nakita mo, tapos, syempre, nagselos ka, nagalit ka, tapos, nung kinumpronta mo sila, right? So, sinaksak mo, pinagsasaksak mo yung lalaki. So, normally, pagdating sa kaso, or pagdating sa trial, hindi yung jealousy yung i-prove dyan. Kasi nga, if yung motive yung titingnan, or if yung jealousy yung titingnan, paano mo ma-determine yung tinatawag na kung ano yung corresponding penalty sa kanya. So therefore, that's the reason why when it comes to trial, it is the intent that is being established or it is the intent that is being proven. So kung sinaksak mo siya, yung desire, so titignan nila, nakailang saksak ka ba, tapos kung yung mga sugat is lahat nasa likod, then yung desire mo is to inflict fatal wounds. At saka yung desire mo, yung intent mo is to really kill that person. So in that manner, so malalaman sa trial kung ano yung corresponding na penalty para doon sa crime na nakomit. Okay? So that's the difference between motive at saka sa intent. However, although I have mentioned that normally in trial, motive is not really relevant. However, there are certain times wherein motive becomes material. And what are these instances? Number one, when the act brings variant crimes. So may nangyari, tapos merong patay na katawan dyan, tapos yung bahay nasunog, tapos may nawawalang gamit. So therefore, you cannot really determine kung ano yung kaso na ipafile. Arson with robbery and homicide ba? Or robbery with homicide and arson? So, yun na nga, that is when motive becomes material. Right? So when the act brings variant crime. So you really need to establish the motive for you to be guided. Now, the second instance wherein a motive becomes material or a motive becomes of substance when there is a doubt whether the accused committed the crime or the identity of the accused is doubtful, which is true indeed. So when the accused or when the identity of the accused is doubtful, so you need to establish kung meron ba siyang motibo or wala. And the purpose of which, kung bakit nagiging relevant or material ang motive is to single out para ma-eliminate yung mga innocent or yung sa tingin mo is innocent at saka yung sa tingin mo is possible na suspects or possible na perpetrator. So that's when a motive becomes material. And then the third instance wherein motive becomes material is when the evidence in the commission of a crime is purely circumstantial only. When we speak of circumstantial evidences, we are talking about evidence that are acquired by mere inference only or mga kumbaga deductions lang natin coming from a certain facts. So therefore, normally, when it comes to trial, medyo mahina yung tinatawag na circumstantial evidence. That's why you need motive para mas tumibay yung circumstantial evidence. And then lastly, motive becomes material when the evidence of the guilt of the accused is inconclusive, or meaning to say it cannot really produce conviction. So in order to convince the judge, so motive should also be established, right? So that's the first element of a crime. Second one is what we refer to as the opportunity. So opportunity is the chance or time given to the offender in committing the crime. Then, last element is yung tinatawag na instrumentality or capability. When we speak of instrumentality or capability, it involves the use of materials and other means which are essential in the commission of the crime. For example, for the crime of rape, what do you think is the instrumentality or the instrument that is being used in the crime of rape? Anybody? Anybody? Mr. Lloyd? For the crime of rape, ano yung instrument? Nakatulog na ata si Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Tolomia,
Ako daw, sir.
sige, Mr. Ronald.
Like, gamit pang patay, sir?
For the crime of rape, ano yung instrument? For the crime of rape, ano yung instrument yan?
Bolo, sir.
Hmm? Rape ha? Rape?
Po.
Force.
Force? Ano pa?
Panyo.
Ano yung instrument? What is rape?
Sexual assault, sir.
Sexual
Sexual
assault?
harassment.
Sexual harassment? Who can be charged for the crime of rape?
Pardon, sir?
Who can be charged for the crime of rape?
BI, sir?
Who can be charged?
The rapist.
Lalaki, babae,
Rapist, sir.
Twitter, sir.
The rapist.
Miss Jarazi, you were saying?
The rapist, sir.
The rapist. I mean, is it exclusive for ano lang? Lalaki?
No.
No, sir.
On what basis? On what basis?
There are also cases, sir, nga na ay babae pod nga mo-rape, sir. Even gays pod, sir.
Babae ang mang-rape?
Oh, na case ana, sir.
Okay. Kasi, if we are to define the crime of rape, usually, according to the revised penal code, parang insertion, okay? Pardon me lang ha, pardon me. Anyways, malalaki naman kayo. Insertion ng pencil doon sa flower. Do you catch my drift?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So insertion ng pencil doon sa flower. So meaning to say, with that definition alone, it simply tells us na if we are to follow the definition of rape in the revised penal code, rape can only be committed by a male to a female. Tama?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If we are to follow that definition. However, there is what we call as Republic Act 8353 or the anti-rape law. Tama?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, in this RA, in this particular law, ang sabi niya, or rather, the crime of rape is no longer exclusive between a man and a woman. Kasi the mere insertion of any foreign object to any opening sa katawan ng isang tao that includes the anal orifice that can be considered the crime of rape. Take note of the word penetration because that is what is being considered for the crime of rape by the students. Why? Kasi for the crime of rape, if there is no penetration, then that cannot be considered a crime of rape. What do I mean by that? Kasi, di ba, yung word insertion, meaning to say, nagkaroon ng penetration. So, assuming, nandun ka, ikaw lalaki, tapos andyan yung babae, tapos ginamitan mo ng pwersa, tapos, assuming, nasa, ano ka na, ibabaw ka na ng babae, Tapos, and then, last minute, you decided not to conduct penetration or not to push through doon sa penetration. Ang ginawa mo lang is, yung pencil mo, inilagay mo lang sa ibabaw ng flower. Then that cannot be considered a rape. Can you follow?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It cannot be considered a crime of rape. Could be an act of lasciviousness. Kasi for the crime of rape, there should be penetration. But nevertheless, what I am trying to point out is the concept of instrumentality or the capability. Or simply speaking, instrumentality or capability refers to the use of materials and other means which are essential in the commission of the crime. Now, going back, as I was saying earlier, these three elements must be present in order for a crime to occur. Okay? So we proceed now with... do you have questions or clarifications? Questions?
Yes, sir. Wala na, sir.
Wala,
Klaro
sir.
tayo dyan? Klaro tayo? Ano yung... If we refer, say for example kasi ito yung common kasi na ito yung common na misconception or common na pagkakamali ng mga students namin when answering board exam questions. Kasi ang tanong refers to the inquiry or refers to the asking of questions in order to ascertain the truth. Ang common na pagkakamali nila is they always answer criminal investigation, which is wrong. Can you follow? Why? Because the question is general in nature. The question asks for the process wherein you inquire or you ask questions in order to determine the truth. So obviously the answer is investigation. But if the questioning goes like this, the process or asking of questions in order to determine the truth surrounding a particular crime in order to determine who perpetrated it, who is the victim, basta anything that has something to do with the crime, andyan yung keyword, then definitely that is what we refer to as criminal investigation. Can you follow?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So since there are no Misalatorio,
Sorry, sir.
okay lang. So since there are no questions, we proceed with evidence. So normally, in the conduct of criminal investigation, since ang main purpose natin is to find out the truth as to what really happened regarding sa isang krimen, then normally, in order for us to do that, we need to provide evidence. All right? We need to look for evidence. So the question is, ano nga ba yung tinatawag na evidence? Okay? So, accordingly, evidence is the means sanctioned by these rules of ascertaining in a judicial proceeding the truth respecting a matter of fact. Okay? Let me ask you, meron na kayong criminal law ngayon?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Book 1, sir.
Pero wala pa kayo sa evidence.
Wala pa, sir.
Wala pa, sir.
Kasi ito yung common na pagkakamali din when it comes to this. Ito yung common na misconception kasi and hindi ito masyadong nabibigyan ng emphasis. Ikaw, as an investigator, okay? Responder ka, Tapos pagpunta mo doon, okay? Or rather, say for ibahin natin yung example. Part ka ng Soko team. Alright? Part ka ng Soko team. Tapos, ikaw yung tinatawag na evidence collector. And then, may na-retrieve ka na cartridge. Or ano bang tawag niyan sa Bisaya? Yung slug ba? Yung basiyo ba yan sa inyo? Anong tawag dyan sa Cebuano?
Basiyo, sir?
Di ba kapag magpapaputok ka ng baril, kapag lalo na kapag ka pistol, di ba yung bullet, yun yung ano, yun yung mapoproject, yun yung mapupunta doon sa target. Tapos, merong mai-eject doon sa baril. Yung cartridge.
Oo, sir. Sir.
Ano ba
Basiyo, sir. Kabhang, sir.
Kabhang.
Kapsula, sir.
Kapsula, kahas. Okay.
Kabhang.
Kasi sa amin sa sa Waray, basiyo ang tawag namin diyan.
Oo, sir. Basiyo, sir. Pwede na.
Basiyo,
Yeah.
sir.
Oh, pwede, sir.
Basiyo.
Basiyo. So yun. So, ikaw as an evidence collector, may nakita ka na basiyo or cartridge or slug. Tell me, can you consider that cartridge, technical na question to ha, can you consider that cartridge as an evidence? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir. If ang victim kay may concert, laman ng bala, pwede rasa na.
Kasi, technically speaking, pag dumating na yung ano ninyo, actually, that is not yet considered as an evidence. Can you follow?
Why not?
Yes, sir.
That is not yet considered as an evidence. What do we call that? Anong tawag dyan?
Trace evidence.
No. It cannot be considered. It cannot be considered yet as an evidence. Technical kasi ito eh. Ang tawag dyan is exhibit. Exhibit pa lang yan. Why? It cannot yet be considered as an evidence. For the reason that ang evidence kasi is it needs to be offered. It needs to be offered in the court. Meaning to say, yung cartridge na yan, okay, before yan ma-consider na evidence, at first, exhibit pa lang yan. Before yan ma-consider na evidence, you need to present that in court. I-present mo yan in court, and then the judge will have to admit that one, or will have to evaluate whether that be considered as an evidence or not. Can you follow?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Sir.
Ini-introduce na, ino-offer muna yan. Okay? So once ma-admit na siya, then that can now be considered as an evidence. So pagdating na ng ng formal trial na, iyan na yung gagamitin doon sa trial. Kasi in the first place, if that particular cartridge have not been introduced in the court, have not been offered as an evidence, hindi yan pwede magamit ng prosecution or ng defense sa korte. Hindi yan pwedeng magamit as an evidence. Walang bearing yan. Can you follow? Take note ha?
Yes, sir.
Kasi ang definition niya is evidence is the means. Ito yung pamamaraan. Okay? Ito yung pamamaraan which is sanctioned, meaning to say, it should be in adherence with the rules of court. So that's why it needs to be offered first before it can be considered as an evidence. And then, ano naman yung purpose ng evidence? So definitely, that is to ascertain, or meaning to say, to verify, in a judicial proceeding kung ano yung totoong nangyari. Alright? So the concept of evidence. So normally, we have different types of evidence. We have the object evidence or yung tinatawag na physical evidence. We have the documentary evidence and we have the testimonial evidences. So we now proceed with the different phases of criminal investigation. Kung baga, ito yung iba't ibang ito yung iba't ibang timeline sa pagkakandak ng criminal investigation. So normally, what usually happens is the first phase is yun, the criminal is being identified. Not only is the criminal being identified, but also the victims, the witnesses. So yun, that's the first phase. That's what usually happens sa criminal investigation. And then normally, once identified na yung victim, once identified na kung sino yung witness, normally, or once identified na kung sino yung suspect, so normally, what's the next thing to do is to trace that particular suspect, to locate that particular suspect, and to arrest that particular suspect. And then, last phase is that the facts or evidence to prove his or her guilt is now being gathered for introduction during trial. So these are commonly the three phases of criminal investigation. So we proceed with the different steps. Ano ba ang iba't ibang or ano ba yung mga ginagawa pagkakasunod-sunod? Take note tayo steps. So meaning to say, hindi ito pwedeng magka-interchange. Kasi baka mamaya, assuming magpa-quiz ako or magpa-recite ako, kindly recite the different steps in criminal investigation. Tapos, ang ginawa mo is nagka-interchange yung different steps. So normally, hindi pwede magka-interchange kapag ka-steps. Right? Procedures, it cannot be interchanged. Right? Pero kung enumeration lang siya, ito yung iba't ibang, these are the different types of criminal investigation. So it can be interchanged. Pero when we speak of steps, when we speak of procedures, this cannot be interchanged. Right? So what are the steps? The first one is, normally, what we do is we try to identify and recognize. Okay? What are being identified and what are being recognized? First, the facts. Right? Ano ba yung mga na-establish na natin na facts? We need to do that. Okay? Do we know already the victim? Or have we identified already the victim? Have we identified already the suspects? What about the witnesses? Have we identified that one? Any information na nakuha? Any evidence na nakuha? So that's the first step. Ina-identify natin, nire-recognize kapag andyan na, ina-identify kapag wala pa. Ina-identify ang mga wala, nire-recognize ang mga nandyan na. That which is already present. Okay? So, after natin ma-recognize, alam natin na kung ano yung available na mga information, ano yung mga wala. So, normally, what comes after is collection. Kino-collect or kinukuha kung ano yung mga meron na, at the same time, kinukuha din kung ano yung mga wala pa. Right? Collection of facts, collection of information, and collection of evidence. However, the third step, take note, my dear students, is simultaneously conducted with that of the second step or yung collection of facts. To be more precise, in the collection of evidence. Why? Kasi while collecting the evidence, you need to ensure, you need to preserve the so-called forensic value. Are you familiar with the poisonous tree doctrine?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with that?
Oo, sir.
Okay. What is that, Mr. Marcos?
Kanang take the rotten one na. Limot ko sa kwan, sir.
Ha? Come again, Mr. Marcos? Fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine.
Inabis- Inadmissible ang evidence, sir, if it was illegally obtained.
Yun, very good. Diba? Yung planting of evidence, diba? Tapos, ano pa? Basta any illegally obtained na evidence. So it cannot be admitted as evidence in the court of law. That is what fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. So what I am saying is, that's why the second step and the third step is interrelated. Meaning to say, while collecting, you have to simultaneously ensure that the forensic value is being preserved. So you have to take note of this fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. Okay? That's the reason why, say for example, as part of the SOCO team or when collecting evidence, there are certain protocols that are being observed in order to prevent the so-called mutilation and contamination of the evidence. Mutilation, baka masira. Contamination, say for example, yung fingerprint, tapos wala kang gloves, hinawakan mo, nako, contaminated na. Diba? Yung cartridge, hinawakan mo with your bare hands, so, contaminated na. Meaning to say, yung kanyang tinatawag na forensic value or yung kanyang legal integrity is hindi na na-preserve. So therefore, what will happen now? Consequently, magkakaroon ng bearing yan. Pag contaminated yung evidence, so normally, magiging inconclusive siya. So, hindi siya pwedeng ma-admit as an evidence. What will happen now? So it could probably weaken the case. Tama? So that's the reason why the second step and the third step must be conducted simultaneously. That's why they are interrelated with each other. Now, after you have collected and at the same time preserved the forensic value of the evidence, what comes next is the evaluation and the processing of evidence and case. Okay, and lastly, to present the evidence in the court of law. So presentation na ng evidence. So meaning to say, na-file na yung kaso, tapos i-present na yung evidence doon sa trial. So these are the common steps in criminal investigation. Anyways, pagdating nga pa sa before nakalimutan ko, pagdating sa fourth step, di ba? Kinonect mo, preserve mo, tapos yung pang-apat, so ano ba yung tinatawag na evaluation at saka processing of evidence and case? So meaning to say, sa evaluation is dinidetermine nyo, ini-evaluate, tinitingnan nyo yung value ng mga evidences na nakuha ninyo. Is it relevant? Is it strongly relevant? Or is it weakly relevant to the case? So that's what happens in the evaluation of the evidence. Tinitingnan nyo, ini-evaluate na. And then normally, pag strongly relevant yung evidence, ito malakas na evidence to, then of course, you need to process that one para sa pag-file ng case. You need to introduce it for the filing of the case. And then lastly, while ongoing na yung trial, so normally you will need to be, rather that evidence needs to be presented para ma-prove kung ano, para ma-prove naman what needs to be proven. Right? So these are the common steps in criminal investigation. I repeat, the first is identification or the recognition of facts, information, evidence. Second one is the collection of facts, information, and then evidence. Third, preservation of forensic value or what we refer to as legal integrity. Fourth, evaluation, processing of evidence and case. And lastly, presentation of evidence and criminal case. So we proceed now with the different goals of criminal investigation. Ano nga ba yung objective? Ano nga ba yung purpose kung bakit tayo nagkakandak ng criminal investigation? Alright? First and foremost, ito yung pinakauna. To determine whether a crime has been committed. Or simply speaking, ito yung tinatawag na element spotting. Okay? Why? Why is the first goal of criminal investigation to determine whether a crime has been committed? As I was saying earlier, kung walang krimen na nangyari, then there is no need for a criminal investigation. Diba? Criminal investigation or finding out the truth surrounding a particular crime. Surrounding a particular crime. Kung walang crime, then there's no need for criminal investigation. So that's why when conducting criminal investigation, or before you formally start your criminal investigation, it is necessary that you determine first, malaman mo muna if may krimen ba na nangyari or wala. Sabi ko nga kanina, as I mentioned earlier, ito yung tinatawag na element spotting. What is this element spotting? Right? Alam niyo kung ano yung homicide?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
What is homicide?
Kuan, sir, kana ganing nakapatay kag tao nga wala sa imong plano, sir.
Okay. So bottom line, killing of a person. Tama?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is murder?
Kuan, sir. Planado niya.
With intent ng murder, sir. Kanang manong mo, sir.
Killing with intent, sir.
Killing with intent.
Kanang sa imong nahuna, sir, nga patio nimo, sir.
Alright. Pero killing of a person din. Tama?
Yes, sir.
Tao din. Tao din yung pinatay. Killing of a person. Now,
Oh, sir.
kunyari, police ka. Tapos, rumesponde kayo. May patay na katawan dyan. Diba? May patay na, may cadaver dyan. What's the first thing to do?
Investigate, sir.
Investigate? Ano yung gagawin mo? Is it murder? Is it homicide?
Dili pa, sir. Wala pang nabuhan, sir. Kasi kapatay.
I-determine nimo, sir.
Definitely my point. Di ba? Definitely my point. Not because merong patay na katawan dyan, not because merong cadaver dyan, is automatically, we will assume that there is a crime. Tama? Kasi baka mamaya, natural death lang yan. Can you follow?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's why, if you watch the news, di ba, mayroon silang sinasabi na wala namang sinyalis ng foul play. Di ba? Wala namang sinyalis ng foul play. Tapos genuine naman yung suicide notes. So what will happen now? Wala silang kakasuhan. Mateterminate na yung or hindi magpupursu yung tinatawag na criminal investigation. Pero, nung tinignan nila ng caliber, may laslas sa pulso. Tapos merong marks dito sa kanyang lieg. Senyalis na baka sinakal siya. Tapos merong stab wounds. So, can you now say that a crime happened? Hello.
Sir?
Can you now say that a crime has been committed?
Yes, sir. Kaya ang gito.
Ano to, Mr. Marcos?
Kaya iyang gitok, sir.
Or simply speaking, hindi natural death yung cause ng hindi hindi natural yung pagkamatay. 'Di ba? May stab wounds, tapos may laslas, tapos meron pang sinyalis na sinakal siya. So normally, kumbaga, hindi siya So you can now say that a crime has been committed. Can you follow?
Yes, sir.
Ayun. So now that you have determined that a crime has been committed, what's the next thing to do? So another goal in the conduct of criminal investigation is, take note to legally, andyan word na legally, to legally obtain information or evidence. So what happens next is kukuha na kayo or maghahanap na kayo, kukuha ng impormasyon or maghahanap na kayo ng pieces of evidence that will support your case. So kung merong stab wounds, so probably ano yung hahanapin mo na weapon? Kutsilyo. Diba? So wag kang maghahanap ng baril. Diba? Kasi nga stab wounds. Diba? So kung merong signs na sinakal siya, ano yung hahanapin mo? So,
Fingerprint, sir.
punta ka doon sa fingernails niya. Kasi baka merong skin
DNA, sir.
Skin. Tapos pwede ka mong ma-DNA test. Di ba? Yun.
Yes, sir.
Or baka merong
Yes, sir.
mga hibla ng buhok. Kasi meron siyang strangulation marks. So yun. So, but take note, as I was saying earlier, the manner in obtaining or gathering information or evidence should be legal. It should be within the boundaries of the law. That's why yung kanina, yung pinag-usapan natin, preservation of forensic value. Now, another goal also of a criminal investigation is commonly malaman kung sino yung mga persons involved. That includes the victim, the witnesses, the suspects. So that's another goal. And then, obviously, to arrest kung sino yung gumawa ng krimen in order for him or her to be accountable sa batas natin. And then, in cases naman na, say for example, robbery, theft, obviously, another goal, kung bakit tayo, another reason why we conduct criminal investigation is to recover stolen properties. And lastly, the reason why we conduct criminal investigation is to present the best possible case to the prosecutor. And then, in the conduct of investigation, there are two modes. Meron tayong dalawang pamamaraan sa pag-conduct ng investigation. Meron tayong pwede yung style na kahit or pwede yung style na magkakandak lang tayo ng investigation pag meron nang nangyaring krimen. That is what we refer to as reactive mode. Okay? Accordingly, reactive mode addresses crimes that already happened or occurred. Kung yung conduct ng investigation is kahit wala pang nangyayaring krimen, we are already conducting investigation based on tips, based on information. Investigation to investigation. Then, that is what we refer to as proactive mode. So, simple lang yung pinagkaiba nila. Simple lang yung tatandaan ninyo para ma-determine nyo kung reactive at saka proactive. Pag sinabing reactive, nagre-react. Andyan yung word na react. Meaning to say, may nangyayari muna bago ka meron gawin. That is reactive mode of investigation. May nangyayaring krimen before ka mag-conduct ng investigation. Yung proactive mode naman, proactive investigation. So these are the two modes of investigation. And then lastly, ito yung question. Ito yung common na question. Is investigation an art or science? Simple lang po.
Both.
Actually, both. Criminal investigation is both considered an art and a science. Ano yung reason? Criminal investigation is considered an art for the reason that it is not governed by rigid rules or fixed legal procedures, but most often than not, it is based on intuition or yung mga yung hunch natin. Yung hunch na yung ano ba, 'di ba? Pag nagkakanda kayo ng investigation, feeling ko ito yung suspect or base sa pagkaka-analyze ko dun sa ito yung suspect. You have that gut feeling. 'Di ba? That's why criminal investigation is considered an art. At the same time, it is considered as a science considering na in the conduct of criminal investigation, ina-apply yung konsepto ng forensic sciences. It involves the application of knowledge of forensic sciences in the process of identifying, locating, collecting, processing, and or evaluating physical evidence. Di ba kung nanonood kayo ng SOCO, di ba? So, may nakitang fingerprints. So, yung fingerprint, dadalhin doon sa laboratory, tapos mag-undergo ng fingerprint examination. So, that is forensic science. Alright? That's why criminal investigation is considered as a science. So, these are the reasons why criminal investigation is both considered an art and a science. And according to Dr. Hans Gross, who happens to be the father of criminalistics, he said that criminal investigation is 95% perspiration, 3% inspiration, and 2% luck. All right? So that ends my presentation for this session. Do you have clarifications, questions, or concerns?
Ako, sir.
Wala
Sir,
rin,
so,
sir.
kalian sa proof and evidence, sir.
Come again, Mr. Ramses?
Kalayan na sa proof ug evidence, sir. Nalibog ko, sir.
Proactive?
No,
Ano?
sir. Proof and evidence. Kalayan na, sir ba?
Ano ang pinagkaiba ng
Yes, sir. Proof at
Proof?
evidence.
at evidence?
Tsaka, yes, sir.
Hindi ko masyadong ano yung question mo, pero if I am to answer your question, ang evidence is ito yung acknowledge ng court na pwedeng magamit, okay? Na pwedeng magamit para malaman talaga kung ano yung nangyari, ano yung totoong nangyari sa isang krimen. Yung understanding ko kasi sa proof is more on generic term siya. Okay? Ang proof is pagpapatotoo. Alright? Pagpapatotoo. So pwede yung evidence can be considered as a proof. Pero ang proof cannot be considered as an evidence. Why? Okay? Kasi yung proof, yung nagpapatotoo, cannot be considered as an evidence if hindi yan inoffer or hindi yan kinonsider as evidence ng court. Pero the other way around, yung evidence naman can be considered as a proof kasi nga nagpapatotoo siya. Hopefully I have answered your question. That's my understanding on your the concept of proof at saka sa evidence. Hello, Mr. Ramses?
Yes, sir. Okay na, sir.
Okay, kasi let me ask you, ano ang pinagbasihan mo doon sa question?
Ano, sir?
Ano yung pinagbasehan mo doon sa question?
Wala naman, sir. Nagtatanong lang ako, sir, kung kasi hindi ko alam kung ano ba ang kaibahan ng proof at saka evidence.
So nabasa mo yung proof at saka nabasa mo din yung evidence.
Yes,
So
sir.
curious ka kung ano ba yung pinagkaiba nila.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. But are you familiar with the so-called burden of proof?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with that? Kung sa regular, kung sa normal na trial, nasa kanino yung burden of proof?
Ano, sir?
Nasa kanino yung burden of proof? Nasa prosecution or na kay defense?
Defense, sir.
Ha?
Prosecutor, sir.
Burden of proof. Yung
Prosecutor.
burden, ano ba yung burden sa Bisaya? Parang kasi yung burden is yung obligasyon o responsibility. Burden of proof is responsibility or yung obligasyon mo na mag-provide na magpatotoo. So meaning to say, kasi sa constitution natin, ang sabi is, kumbaga, the accused is presumed innocent unless proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. So meaning to say, pagka inakusahan ka na ikaw ang pumatay kay Pedro, ang may obligasyon na magpatotoo dyan sa akusasyon na yan is hindi ikaw. Hindi mo obligasyon as being accused na mapatotohanan na or ma-refute na hindi ikaw yung gumawa ng krimen. Kumbaga, yung burden of proof or yung obligasyon na magpatotoo is na kay prosecution, hindi nasa sayo as a defendant. Can you follow?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other concern or question? Basta kaya kong masagot, I'll try my best. Sige na. Question lang. Hello. Wala magtatanong. Ako na lang ang magtatanong. Okay lang? Mga tulog na ata yung students ko.
Sir, na ako'y kuhan sa question, sir.
Sige, Mr. Mapalo.
Kanang mga pulis, sir, ba, if makapatay sila, sir, nana
Basta
sila,
man.
case na sir, na sila kaso makakuha na sir. Bisag
Pag
lang
may magreklamo, and then merong basehan yung reklamo, then pwede sila makasuhan. Pero pag walang magreklamo, makapatay sila, say for example, makapatay sila ng kriminal, walang magreklamo, wala silang kaso.
pero mo reklamo na sir kaya ang pamilya na sir sa kriminal na.
Yes, pwede yan. Kung mareklamo ang pamilya, then pwede kayong mag-file ng kaso. Ang question lang dyan is whether or not mag-prosper yung kaso na i-file ninyo. Pero as to the question of whether you can file a case or not, definitely, that is a yes. Pwede kang makapag-file.
Okay sir, thank you sir.
Take a look, for example, yung war on drugs. Okay? During the height of the implementation of the Open Tokang or war on drugs, di ba, may napatay dyan. Iyak nang iyak, ano. Pero, hindi nagreklamo yung pamilya. Wala silang reklamo. What happened doon sa police? Wala, di ba? Kasi merong tinatawag na presumption of regularity. Anong ibig sabihin ng presumption of regularity? Mean to say, pagdating sa mga law enforcement operations, whatever is the result, it is presumed na tama yung ginawa ng law enforcement officer. Not unless merong compelling evidence na nagsasabi otherwise or nagpapakita otherwise. Nire-refute yung regularity. Ipinapakita niya yung irregularity. Kagaya noong kaso ni Kian de los Santos. So nung una, since walang reklamo, the conduct of the operation was presumed regular. But then, nagreklamo yung pamilya, tapos merong nakita na yung autopsy report, pinatunayan nito na nung manner ng pagkakabaril kay Kian was that hindi siya during that time nire-refute yung sinabi ng mga police officers na nanlaban siya. Kasi base doon sa autopsy report, yung trajectory ng bala is from the back of his head, lumabas dito sa forehead niya, dito sa front. What does that implies? Meaning to say, the manner ng pagkakabaril niya is pwede, dalawa yung assumptions, nakaluhod yung tao, tapos nakayuko, tsaka binaril. Kaya yung entrance wound is dito sa likod ng ulo, tapos yung exit wound is dito sa forehead. Or pwede ring, another assumption is, yung bumaril is mas maliit kaysa kay Kian. Okay? Para yung trajectory nung time na binaril niya si Kian is pataas yung trajectory ng bala niya. Of these two assumptions, mas kapanipaniwala yung first assumption, yung nakaluhod tsaka binaril. So in that manner, yung tinatawag na presumption of regularity, na-overrule na siya. Kasi mas matimbang na ngayon yung sa irregularity. Hence, nag-prosper ngayon yung kaso against doon sa mga police officers na pumatay kay Kian de los Santos. Can you follow?
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
So hopefully, I have answered your question. Okay? Mr. Mapalo, any other clarification or question?
None so far, sir.
What about the rest? Do you have a question? Clarification?
None, sir.
Wala, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, nakapag-purchase na kayo ng e-books nyo?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
So, yung e-books po natin na is binabasa po yan na, hindi po yan dekorasyon sa mga cellphones po natin. So, much as we could, we have to read it. Alright? So, hindi pwede na umaasa lang tayo doon sa discussions ng instructors natin. Kailangan nagbabasa rin tayo. Kasi baka mamaya, malay nyo, di ba? Malay nyo, nagsisinungaling lang ako. Di ba? So at least, pag nagbabasa kayo, mas lumalawak pa yung knowledge. Okay? So, can I have or can I check your attendance? Kindly open your cameras, please. Open your cams, please. Mag-open din ako para at least tayo? Sige, Mr. Ganilon, so I can check your attendance.
Present, sir.
Yeah, kindly open your cam.
Pana, sir.
Sige, so let me document it ha. So give me your best smiles. 1, 2, 3. Isa pa, once more. Last. Right. 1, 2, 3. All right. So again, thank you. Okay, thank you. So hopefully you have learned something from this session. Anyways, let me inform you that your preliminary examination will be on September 19 to 20. 1 week from now will be your preliminary examinations already. And then tomorrow, you do not have classes, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Non-working
Yes, sir.
holiday sa inyo. Osmeña Day. Sana all non-working. Sa amin, pati Sabado at Linggo, working. So yun, so just a reminder na by September 19 to 20, preliminary exams ninyo. So we try to wrap up everything by Tuesday, I think, so that by Thursday, ma-enforce, magkaroon tayo ng activity to reinforce your learnings dito sa subject na to. Para at least, pagdating ng exam, hindi kayo mga mote. Okay? So, kung gusto nyong pumasa, so tulungan nyo din yung sarili nyo. Tutulungan ko kayo, at the same time, tulungan nyo din yung sarili nyo. Hindi pwede na ako lang yung gumagawa ng trabaho. Dapat gawin nyo din yung trabaho nyo. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sige. So, ang iba mga ano bang mute sa sa Cebuano? Ngula?
Ilong.
Ha?
Ilong.
Hilom.
Hilom. Pag hindi nakakapagsalita, hilom yun. Tama ba?
Amang, sir, amang.
Amang. Amang.
Amang na, amang.
Amaw.
Wa.
Amang.
Amang, sir, amang. Si
Oh, amaw. Say amaw. Ang amaw, ano yung amaw?
Expression na, sir, like,
Amang, hindi amaw. Okay. Nako. See, di ba? Yung pinagkaiba ng nung
Dan yung
language.
amang.
So, dagang amang. Muingon na ko dagang amaw. Dagang amang. No? Konti lang yung sumasagot sa akin. But nevertheless, so hopefully, I repeat, you have learned something from this session. So again, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Goy,
you.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, good sir.
Bye, sir. Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Okay, thank you.